Okay, I'll be honest. I just want to talk about Omniscient Reader because it's genuinely like my favorite story, and it's like the perfect topic. Some reading some other stories that are like, kind of in the same vein, and perfect way to compare the two based off of how they treat the background characters. Obviously, before we get into this, read Omniscient Reader. Genuinely one of the best stories I've ever read. There's a book, and there's also a manual and webtoons. Check them out. It's free. Spoiler alert for the first few chapters of Omniscient Reader, and I guess a bit later on in the story, but that's a very small amount. And I guess I'll be fair and also say spoiler alert for Solo Max Level Newbie, but don't read it. I mean, you can. It's... I didn't like it. But to start it out, I'm going to talk about one of the... I can't even say that with a straight face. It's one of the worst, like, manual I've ever seen. It's called Solo Max Level Newbie. Now, you may be hearing me saying, oh, it's the worst. If you read it, you'll see it's just a blatant ripoff of both Omniscient Reader and Solo Leveling. In both of these, we have a Korean man who wears a white jacket, who has engaged in a form of media, and he was the last one to engage in this and either finish reading the book or beat the game. And then their world becomes similar to that media. They know what's going to happen. They can steal and copy abilities. And they have a rival who is a black jacket. It is absurd how close. There's probably more stuff I haven't even talked about. But it's insane how close it is. And I kept thinking to myself, why are these two, why is one my favorite and one I can't even continue reading? Then I realized the majority of it is the background characters and how this world is being treated. I'll be comparing both these stories in the very first scene when the character realizes their world became fictional and how they dealt with it. I'll start with Solo Max Level Newbie because you'll see the drastic difference between the two. He goes into the subway and there is a tree that has fruit that boosts your stats. And right beside him is someone he knew previously. And throughout the fight, you can see it right here. Everyone dies. Well, majority of everyone here dies. And he actively sacrifices the person he knew so he can continue. But it's clear to me, at least when reading it, he didn't need a sacrifice because he's been doing it by himself for years. So he just didn't need to kill him. So he actively went out of his way to kill this guy. In Omniscient Reader, they're in a train car. And they're being locked in, and they have to kill another person. Or any living entity. And so everyone is fighting for their own lives, and to kill at least one other thing. Main character uses grasshoppers to pass, technically. In doing that, it is actively shown, especially later on, that him saving himself and then killing all the grasshopper eggs basically damned everyone else on the train car. Besides, you know, them. All because he could use the eggs to spread out and make sure they all live, because it all counted as a living entity. They all could have survived. And the two different reactions that I get from these events, on the surface level, they're the exact same. First event, people are dying, main character doesn't want to, and main character wants to come out ahead. But while in Solo Max Level Newbie, he goes out of his way to kill people. In Omniscient Reader, he goes out of his way to not kill people, and then still indirectly kills them. I also think the choice to have them forced in the situation rather than they choose to go to this situation is also stronger, but... And even throughout Omniscient Reader, like later on, it's still shown that he feels guilty about the people who've died in the train car, even though it just wasn't his fault. But on Solo Max Level Newbie, there's no sort of like understanding that these people have died. It's more of like, idiots should have played the game. Getting back to the thesis topic, I think the best way to use background characters is to actually use them as people, as characters, instead of just like objects in the background. Of course, in Omniscient Reader, a lot of these characters are background. There's only one real character who the main character like cares about, but she is an example of how he feels bad that they all died, that he could have saved them. So a way to use background characters, they're not, not really the supporting cast, like they're fully in the background, is little blurbs. I think this scene shows it a lot best. Of course, it's an Omniscient Reader as well, but it shows, he even says it here, these weren't in the pages of the book. This is what real people, how they would react. And this is true human suffering about how these scenarios go down. And that is the perfect way. While in Solo Max Level Newbie, it's not really shown how these events are affecting humans. Like, they're living under a threat of complete annihilation every 90 days. And they're just kind of living life normally. There's no fear, there's no stress. There's not even a surge of people trying to stop the end of the world. While in Omniscient Reader here, they're forced into it. They don't have a choice. Everyone in the background is essentially their own character and their own story. They don't have a choice to opt out. To get my points across, I'm kind of being roundabout with this because, I just want to talk about Omniscient Reader some more. But in order to use actually good background characters is make them feel like they could have been a real character if the story focus was shifted just a bit. Or make any time one of them dies, now, of course don't be like dramatic each time one dies, because that'll just slow down the pacing of a story. But make sure it has the same hit as you're realizing these are people dying. They're not the main characters, you don't feel as bad, but these are, in their own world, they are people. Also, I think third is to have little things like this. This is the perfect thing. It shows them being real characters. I have no idea who any of these characters are. I don't even think you see them again. But you can see the infighting, the problems that are being caused, because these are characters. They could have just sat around and have done nothing, and the story would have progressed just the same. And fourth is to remember that background characters flesh out the world more than they flesh out the characters. Like, not every character has to be named, not every background character has to be named, whole history written out, but they're being used to represent a group of people. Like her, she represents a train car. He is nothing. I don't remember his name. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about, my favorite story and then my least favorite one back to back and compare them. Anyway, see ya.